A central acronym that I like to use is istium, which stands for I see that it's unmanageable. Or I see that it is unmanageable. I have to have it in front of me to see. But point being, we're trying to manage, right? If we're eating food, if we're worried about petrochemicals, 5G, plastics, what someone else is doing, what our career is going to go toward, our trauma from our childhood, the desire for love, the fear of rejection, all that stuff we're trying to control, we're trying to manage. And it takes an amazing amount of faith, perhaps, and fortitude to say, I'm not going to try to manage any of that. I'm just here in this present moment, and I'm not going to be thinking about the things that are potentially invading me, the things I can't control, and also a mixture of our responsibility to others. Because on the one hand, there's a value in our responsibility to our body and to other people. To our body, it's what am I taking in? Microplastics, 5G. What am I putting out? Am I recycling? Am I composting? But while that is good, we can go too far when we're trying to manage everything, right? Then we have istium. I see that it is unmanageable. So I see that I'm trying to manage it. So it's about the middle way. So part of me is totally present and not worrying about the trauma of the past or the trauma of the present or the trauma of the future. And part of me is being responsible, saying what did happen in the past that I need to heal, and where am I heading in my future. It's very tricky because as soon as we start to think about our career, our relationships, our relationship with physical things like plastics, 5G, food, money, career, and our impact on others, we may try to manage it. So it's sort of like seeing the two sides. In the mask or persona, there's a desire to manage, or there's a fear that it's unmanageable. And whichever there is, if there's a desire to manage, then the shadow may have, or probably has, a fear that it's unmanageable. If we have in the conscious mind, the persona, the mask, a fear that it's unmanageable, then the shadow may be holding thoughts about how it might be manageable. Or, so it's basically whatever the opposite is. And so, what if the work is just to see, how am I trying to manage, or how am I fearing it's unmanageable, and go to the third way, or the synthesis, or the ex nihilo, which is just to simply admit, gosh, this is unmanageable. How am I supposed to avoid 5G, or how am I supposed to avoid plastic, or how am I supposed to stop overeating? Whatever the issue you've got, how am I supposed to always recycle? How am I always going to compost? Sometimes it's not convenient or practical to do so. So instead of putting our primary emphasis on how to manage, how we can't manage, our fear of managing, we put most of our emphasis on admitting that it's unmanageable. Yes, some energy might go toward trying to manage. You might move to a place where there's no radiation, or you can drink out of a clay urn, or you may keep information to yourself that may impact others. You may not always rush to make them the victim and yourself the rescuer. But at the same time, people may want to come to you for help, and you don't want to turn them down. So it's very tricky. The mind only deals in binaries. I can manage. I can't manage. I should manage. I wish I could manage. I am managing, right? All those binaries that the shadow and the mask take. But if you simply say istium, I see that it is unmanageable, then if that's what you're saying in the conscious mind, then the unconscious mind might be saying, well, maybe it's manageable. Maybe there's a way to manage it. You're like, yeah, maybe. But right now, what I'm seeing is that the conflict between the shadow and the mask, every time I try to manage it, I have problems, right? Because the way I try to manage it is to suppress what's in the shadow and elevate what's in the mask. And that makes going through life technically easier, right? Because you're like, oh, I know this is all good, or I know this is all bad. If you were to really let in that you don't know, that it's not manageable, that you don't even know what's good and what's bad, it seems like you would feel overwhelmed and frightened, but that's the state, I believe, of people who are awakened. They're like, yeah, I trust the universe, so it doesn't matter that I have no clue where I'm going or how to solve this particular issue with mold or 5G or microplastics or overeating or how I'm impacting my students. I could try to do things, but it's really not ultimately manageable. The 5G is going to get in, right? Musk has put the satellites in the sky, and plastics are everywhere already. Radiation is everywhere. And if you have an issue with eating, it may never go away. Or the approach that you use to have it go away leads to some other metaphorically equal thing. So like people stop drinking and they start smoking, right? Or they stop eating and they start smoking. Long ago, I don't think the pill is available anymore, Dexatrim. People would take that pill so they wouldn't eat, but then it made them kind of manic. So it always seems to be a trade-off, because underneath there is, in theory, some message the universe is trying to tell you that, hey, you're trying to manage. And you're not here to manage things. You're here to accept that it is unmanageable.